Gold and silver lured Spanish explorers into the American Southwest, but one element proved far more vital: water. More than treasure, water decided the fate of every expedition, mission, and settlement. In consequence, Spaniards named every reliable source they came upon: spring, creek, river, or pond, not just for navigation, but for survival. They named the mountains, too, the most formidable obstacles in their path. And when they found natural corridors through them, often by following rivers to their source, the passes were named as well. El Paso del Norte, Sangre de Cristo, Las Animas, to name a few. But more than just names, they were records, traces of their trek, guiding signposts for those who followed in their wake. That is to say, by understanding a waterway's name, one could uncover its history too. One such waterway was the Huérfano River. Stretching nearly 100 miles, it winds through southern Colorado, from its source in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains to its confluence with the Arkansas River near present-day Pueblo. Today, you might pass it without a second glance. But the name Huérfano, orphan, carries a mystery. It's a name that begs to be explored if we're to understand this river and the story behind it. Let's begin. After Mexico gained independence in 1821, a new chapter opened in the history of New Mexico. With the Santa Fe Trail now linking the region to the United States, American traders began to learn why the land's rivers, passes, and peaks bore the names they did. Through this exchange, they discovered, for example, that Greenhorn Creek commemorated the defeat of the Comanche chief, Cuerno Verde. Later, the surrounding mountains adopted the creek's name, giving us Greenhorn Mountain today. But not every story survived. With Spanish archives sealed away in Mexico City during the turbulent years of independence, convenient explanations gradually replaced the forgotten truths behind many landmarks. Now let's take a closer look at the Huérfano River. The common story goes like this. The river takes its name from a solitary butte along its course, a landmark said to stand orphaned from other geological features. But that tidy explanation doesn't hold up. Right away, it runs counter to Spanish naming traditions. First you find a river, and then you name it, not the other way around. The historical record bears this out. No colonial Spanish map, journal, or naming record from the 1700s or early 1800s links the river to the butte. And one must ask, why would Spanish explorers, focused on survival, settlement, and military strategy, name an entire river system after a lone butte with no strategic or navigational value? On the plains, where such formations are countless, a solitary butte was no more remarkable than any other. Naming a river for it would have been like naming one after a stray prairie dog. Vivid, perhaps, but meaningless. The truth is that Orphan Butte's story was likely invented by Mexican traders, not because it was accurate, but because they didn't know the real origin either. It was simply the version they passed along to their American counterparts. It was clear, simple, easy to grasp, and just plausible enough to believe. But what if there's a completely different explanation? Let's go back to Cuerno Verde. After his defeat in 1779, Governor Juan Bautista de Anza began working toward peace with the Comanche, a process that culminated in a formal treaty by 1786, ending a conflict that had raged for much of the 18th century. The Coatzotica Band, known as the Buffalo Eaters, had risen to prominence under a leader the Spanish called Ecueracapa, meaning leather cape. He was chosen to represent the Western Comanche bands in the negotiations. Under the terms of the treaty hammered out at Pecos, Pueblo, the Comanche and Spanish agreed to combine their forces against a common foe, the Apache. It was a remarkable reversal. Only a few years earlier, Comanche raids had pushed New Mexico to the brink of collapse. And now, for the first time in their shared history, Spanish and Comanche warriors were preparing to fight side by side. This new alliance will be tested in the spring of 1786, when Comanche and Spanish forces rode together for the very first time. The campaign was led by Ecueracapa himself. They rode south from the plains toward the Sandia Mountains and struck an Apache rancheria at dawn. The battle was swift and brutal. Several Apache were killed, 2 taken prisoner, and more than 40 horses and mules captured. To commemorate the victory, Governor Anza sent them a Tarja, a tally sheet, so that the Comanche captains could record the results of their campaign. Ecueracapa proved himself worthy of his title, Conatana, the one without equal in military achievements. That wasn't his name, it was his distinction. The Spanish used it to set him apart, a way of saying, this one stood above the rest. He was the crane on the cross, clearly a Catholic reference. They also called him Coda de Maya, coat of mail, for the chain armor he wore in battle. But it was in that same report that they recorded something new. They called him El Huérfano, the orphan. We don't know why. Was it his original Comanche name, translated into Spanish? Did he grow up without parents? Was he marked by loss, or simply set apart by solitude? Or was he an orphan maker? There are no explanations given. Nevertheless, in this Tarja, it is clearly written, El Huérfano. Don't fret, the Orphan Butte story still has its place. It's a Santa Fe Trail story, passed from trader to trader, until it became part of the landscape itself. Over time, the tale transformed the butte into a familiar landmark, a signal that the river was near, a guidepost for countless travelers who passed through. When these lands were transferred to the United States and the Colorado Territory was created, it was only fitting that, when it came time to name the local county, no other name would do. It was for this butte that Huérfano County gained its name, and there's no harm in continuing to tell the story. But as the source for the river's name, it just doesn't hold water. Still, consider this. If the Spanish could name a waterway for Cuerno Verde, a fallen enemy, why not name one for a powerful ally? Ecueracapa was exactly the kind of figure they might have commemorated on a map. It's more than plausible, it's compelling. The Huérfano River may well have been named for the Comanche chief. There is no direct evidence, of course. But the coincidence is hard to ignore. The river runs through territory he once controlled, and in at least one surviving document, the Spanish remembered him as El Huérfano. So is it named for a butte, a lonely signal on the trail, or for a leader whose shadow still lingers on these plains? We may never know. Yet whether shaped by stone or by story, both versions remind us that names carry memory, sometimes preserving it, sometimes distorting it. The Huérfano River stands at the confluence of the two, where history and legend merge like tributaries in a basin of truth.